Yes, it's been a year. Maybe some people forgot. We haven't. It's been a year.
City officials were hoping releasing the video and the 911 call would be the first step towards helping the city to heal. But the family of Walter Wallace is hoping it will also lead to police reform. Action reporter Katie Cottrell live in Center City tonight with that story. Katie.
And Rick, the family is not calling for murder charges. They are not filing a lawsuit, but they are calling for police reform.
It's not just about charging folks. This is about a systemic change and shifting policy and making reform so that there's not another Walter Wallace ever again in this city. Put the knife down now!
This is the first time body cam footage from the Philadelphia Police Department has been released. Wallace's family.
So, yes, we are here a year later after the Walter Wallace shooting, and people are asking if they should have more guns or if they should have less guns and more tasers. You know what I mean? That's very valid. I want to ask, what has been done? Seriously, what has been done since? And when I get into it in a second, we'll see. I wanted to, because I promised that I would go ahead and put the links in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and do that so people can grab them now. We've already been on. So when I I really haven't honestly kept up with politically, law, reform, any of that as far as Philly goes. I had my own things to pay attention to here in Lancaster, where I reside. But now that it's been a year later, I am starting to think about this a lot more, especially because I forgot that today is also Dante Wright's birthday. So I will have a short thing about that as well. But apparently, Philly police will get stun guns. They're going to spend $14 million to equip all of their police officers with stun guns, train them on how to use them, and require officers to wear them while on duty. Oh, really now? We shall see. Seriously, because I don't know who's worse, Philly or New York police, honestly. And you're really saying this is, I mean, we'll give it a shot, really, but the Philly Inquirer apparently announced this yesterday on the anniversary of his police shooting, which, let's get into it, was filmed by a bystander and sparked days of protests over police brutality. The then 27-year-old Wallace, who would now be 28, who was black, was having a mental health episode. And yes, he was holding a knife when he was shot 14 times. Does not matter. You should not be shot for having a knife in your hand. That's a whole nother story that we'll get into. But the two white officers were not equipped with stun guns. And apparently this announcement was made in coordination with Wallace's family, including his mother, who was there when the shooting occurred. The killing of Mr. Wallace was painful and traumatic for many Philadelphians, said Mayor Jim Kenney in a statement. This tragedy and unsettling incident, along with last year's protests, underscored the urgency of many important reforms, such as mental health training and crisis response resources. After the shooting, police and city officials said that nearly 2/3 of the more than 6,000 member police force were not equipped with or trained to use electroshock weapons, which, as they say, is a less lethal use of force, which, okay, you could still kill someone though, but it's less likely than using a gun. So yeah, but of course that was just a few months after George Floyd was killed, and protests were already going across the country. So I was there after Walter Wallace was killed, and I witnessed a lot. So even before Wallace was killed, city activists and politicians and community members were already pushing for different things, including officers to be equipped with stun guns. It had been recommended back in 2015 after a report was filed by the Department of Justice, and we shall see. Wallace's family had called for help several times during the day of his shooting, and the final 911 call actually warned that Wallace was mentally unstable. As part of reforms in how police and first responders handle mental health crises after the shooting of Wallace, the city began a pilot program that pairs a healthcare worker with a police officer to respond to 911 calls. And it says that the city hopes to expand on that program. But again, that day, um, it's crazy how like you remember certain sights, sounds, and things, but then you don't remember how things set off, right? Like I remember seeing the video for the first time, and I don't remember anything else until I was there. And seeing photos like this image right here is what I specifically remember. And I didn't have the time. I didn't feel like going through all of my photos on my laptop, but I have so many photos from that night. I have so much video footage from that night. It's funny when you, again, memories are wrapped up in feelings or emotions or senses rather than the actual visual memory of what you saw or what you thought you saw. It's not quite the same with certain things. It's the things that really touched you in some big way, life altering, changing way. And not only seeing how it affected me, but other people that I was with, took me back to other things that I had witnessed prior to that. And I was not alone in that. I mean, all the people that were there, and it was hundreds of people spanning neighborhoods and neighborhoods throughout West Philly that I was abound going through. And you look in someone's eyes, it hits you in your gut because you know that they've experienced the same kind of things that you've experienced. You know that they feel what you're feeling, and you don't have to look them in the face to know. But when you do, it's 1,000 times stronger when you see that certain look in someone's eyes. So many people want to go straight to the aftermath of things and the looting or the amount of things that were destroyed, right? But again, I witnessed a lot of things, and one thing I witnessed was a look on people's faces will always stick with me. And the best way that I could describe some looks were, yeah, everybody had a fuck the system aura on, right? But other people that didn't understand what we meant by fuck the system, it was more fuck this. Like not just fuck this, not just fuck capitalism, but fuck this life, this style, this lifestyle, this way of living, this society, this matrix that we're stuck in. This can't be real. Fuck it all. And when you get to that point, it really consumes you. It really, certain sights, certain sounds, certain intimidations don't intimidate you. They don't have the same effect that they did because you're already traumatized. And energies feed off of each other, right? One after another, energies feed off of each other. Hey, I'm just now seeing comments. I'm so sorry. Thank you for tuning in. I just want to say that there's so many. Sometimes hurt people hurt people. Sometimes when you're so hurt and you don't give a fuck, you don't have anything left in you to have the energy to hurt anyone, but you can still hurt anything, if that makes sense. And that's some of the energy that I also picked up on. Straight up, long live Walter Wallace. The last seconds. The last seconds of Walter Wallace Jr.'s life have played in the minds of many people for the past year. They are among those who watched the police body cam video of Wallace right before he was shot by Philadelphia police. It was a traumatic day. October 26th, 2020, on the 6100 block of Locust Street in West Philly. Wallace's family called 911 because he was having a mental episode. Wallace had a history of mental illness, which involved diagnoses of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, same as Ricardo Munoz, who we've talked about, who was a month ago prior to this. And so now every year it is going to be like boom, boom, you know. The day police were called, Wallace had been attacking his mother, the very woman who tried to intervene when police drew their guns as they instructed Wallace to put down a knife. Of course, they didn't think that the family, meaning, and Wallace's mother, didn't think that they would lose Wallace that day. And so the family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit. Groups like the NAACP Philadelphia branch asked why police couldn't use non-lethal force. At the time, police said it was because officers on scene didn't have tasers. That's not a sound excuse. And one of the local news stations found that there's been little change when it comes to the issue of tasers in the police department since Walter Wallace's death. In October of last year, the Philadelphia Police Department had 2,300 tasers. You know how many they have today? 2,360. They've only gained 60 tasers. But police note that they have 330 fewer officers. According to numbers provided to Action News, which is one of the local news stations, Philadelphia has 5,950 total officers. Of that figure, 3,565 are on patrol. Dividing the number of tasers by the number of officers means just under 40% of them would have tasers. Dividing the tasers among just patrol officers would mean about 66% of them have access to non-lethal resources, as they say. But local organizers are stating that every officer should have and be trained to have and use a taser, especially over a gun, a traditional gun, whatever. I mean, I would prefer you didn't have any of that, but that's me. I mean, I would prefer you didn't exist, but that is me. Police say they've recently received a shipment of 4,650 newer model tasers, which will be on the streets once officers are trained on how to use them. crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. I just can't believe that it's seriously it, that it's been a year later. Um, when Ricardo Munoz happened and we did a vigil for a year later, that I don't know, it felt like a year, but with Walter Wallace it doesn't for some reason. And so they're gonna spend 14 million to get new tasers. I don't know if that's the shipment that they just said that they're just receiving, or if this is another shipment on top of it. But I don't see or hear anything as of late that talks about anything else as far as changes or growth. So that brings me back to my question: what has changed? What do we think should change, specifically speaking of Philly, specifically speaking of mental health, tasers, knives, that whole nine? Whether it's a smaller city like Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or whether it's a bigger city like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we really need to start thinking about this uniformly across the board, because they're really, from what I've seen and felt, at least what comes out on the surface for mainstream, nothing is really spoken of. And then what is spoken of is lighthearted stuff to provide some kind of debate and discourse. But beyond that, what are we really getting but hot air, phoniness fed to us, bullshit narratives, and yet the Philly Police Department continues to, from what I'm seeing, be exactly who they are. And this happens with the rest of the other places as well. Like it's nothing is what I've gotten, at least from the Philly scene as far as organizing goes, is less how I say, tangible, hot on the stove kind of action, and more planning, and that is much needed. It's much necessary. And that's not stuff you're always gonna see on mainstream media up front. And it's not always something that's announced. So on a positive and optimistic note, there are still people that are still fighting the good fight and doing things. You just may not know about it or hear it, but they're there, they're out there, they're doing due diligence. That is a very, very, very good point. A day, a flag, a wannabe honor of such a day, but not one fucking policy change that benefits us, the people, especially the Black community. And that's what I mean by, like, the mainstream media will put this smoke screen up to say, okay, yeah, we're here, we acknowledge that this happened, but that's where it ends. That's where we're going to keep it. Let's commemorate it and leave it at that. Hopefully people will just smear it under the rug. No one will talk about it, and therefore the steam will let go, and people won't do anything about it. Again, I can assure you that there are people still fighting the good fight, but there's no momentum behind it, because people have been, again, here's that word, disenfranchised. People have been broken up, if you will. It doesn't mean that they're not here. They're here. When I was there for a few nights, back to the story. for a few nights, and things were, from watching the scene of solidarity then and then now, yeah, things change. The way that things are handled change. But we also are in a state of mind, not all of us, I'm not, but there are a lot of people in a state of mind of immense distraction. And speaking of Pennsylvania in particular, speaking of Philadelphia and speaking of Lancaster, there is a lot of distraction going on in the form of migrations that we haven't been able to scale the totality of things until we're looking back like 10 years from now and being able to see exactly how things kind of went down. Right now, we're so caught up in this storm and no one has the chance to settle. And you're not going to. That's the way that life is. But a lot of people have refocused their attention to trying to gain their footing, or at least hold on to what footing they have. And other people don't have that luxury to have footing. Okay, some people are just nomads in that sense, and they have to work in the realm of just following the injustice, or following their gut and going with staying the course, even if other people don't see any point. But the thing is, there's always a point to fight, right? There's always a point to remember. It's always a point to remember through your loved ones. It's always a point to remember through the lives that we've lost. How and why we're trying to and going to affect change, right? Because we've got to have something to be our anchor, whether it's physical or spiritual or just simply tangible. We need to make sure that we're doing things for some purpose, or what do we have left? I can't believe it's been a year later, but at the same time, I can't believe that it's been a year later because I don't see any tangible change. But I can also believe it's been a year later because I see a lot of growth in a lot of people, whether that be take it how you want it, whether it be bad or good, or how you just see experience as experience. But I see a lot of growth and change, and I think that's gonna come to like a big bubble one of these days, where like you're gonna see an explosion of a lot of movements happening. I think we're at the early stages of things, at the first shots fired, if you will. But don't let up. It's always gonna be, at least for me. Be safe, y'all.